Hello everybody, Trance here, and welcome to my first BrickRigs video where I discussed my building style, the way I build, what I build, and I am here in the editor with the Regal Kingsman. We're going to start with the very basics of how I build. Here we have the chassis for the Regal Kingsman. This is how I start all of my creations. When I start the chassis, I start with these bits right here, or these depending on what layout I'm going for, but this is what the chassis would look like for a car that I would make. And here we have the chassis of one of my trucks. So you can see the differences yourself. I mean, they're not many. And then there are some too, and what I started doing recently, this is something I would recommend to anybody who's building a chassis. If you're gonna build like the back of the car, don't stick it on to bits like this, bits that are angled off of the main body, because then they won't ever connect together. I built the back off of this piece of the chassis right here, that 2x4, and that way everything fit together. If I built it off of here, then it wouldn't have fit together. I mean, I can demonstrate that. So the blue is connected to the normal chassis, and the white is connected to the angled part, and you can already see where that causes an issue. This piece will never be able to connect. The next part of almost every vehicle that I make is the very front. So when I make the front, I normally start at the bottom and work my way up, making the engine bay and putting the engine in. Usually after I do the frame, I do the wheels and get everything all fitted together so I can test drive it. After that, I get the main shape of the body down, including the most important piece for me, something that I include in a lot of my vehicles, and that would be the mudguard. And I like this level of detail, looking at the side and seeing that poking out just a little bit. That is something I always try to incorporate into my creations, and then after that I do the doors, and then the hood and the trunk, and I put them all in place once I have the main shape of the body done. And I have people come to me and ask how I do my actuators, and I don't get that all the way because it really isn't that hard. I can give a rundown of what I do right now. I would normally do them like that, because then you can build right off the top of that piece. But I find a good starting point and I lay it down, and then I build the hood off of that. And I know I put this in the wrong way, but it will still connect up, hopefully. But apart from that, the controls, if I go back here, throttle, alt, I use that for all of my hoods. And the max angle is very, very dependent on what type of vehicle you're building. This is a big hood, and opening a hood that big up quite a far ways does not look normal. So I kept it restricted to 30. Trunks, on the other hand, they open pretty far. This one right here opens 64 degrees. Next we have the doors, and these are held into the car itself in a very interesting way. And I took the chassis off, so these aren't going to be connecting to any of the pieces, but you know, those are the doors. And here are the doors. I normally start with a very basic design of even just that, and connect it up to the actuator to get the function down, and as I go further on with the car, I'll add more detail. Actuating these are very, very simple. The only thing you have to watch out for with actuators is that they aren't colliding with any other actuated piece, or it'll cause a lot of glitching out, which I can also demonstrate later. Here we have the controls for all of the doors, steering, alt, and the minimum angle. This is dependent, the minimum and max angle, this might be where people get confused. It is dependent on the angle and way that you lay out your actuator, and the best way to do it is to put in one minimum angle and an input axis, and then just spawn it and try it out. And then after a little while, you will memorize the different orientations of the actuators corresponding to the different angles. Or you could look at the arrows, because this arrow is clearly saying that actuator right there it's gonna push like that. You could always do that too, but why do we need simple things like that? None of us really care about the simple stuff. And then I move on to the interior. I'm going to reload this again. Hopefully you're not looking at any of my other creations there. And let's start bringing this out. This is very odd to look at outside of the vehicle. It doesn't look nice at all, but when it's fitted inside, it has a nice aesthetic. But what I want to point out here is how the seats are fitted on. If you look under, they're actually resting way down there on a redirector. The redirector, if I can find it, there we go, is set up so you can have these two seats side by side and a little piece along the middle, basically not having them directly next to each other. Once I finish the interior, I finish the body, I've put the roof on, which I do usually as I do the interior, and I'm good to go. I test it out. Normally I test each creation out for about 2 hours before I post it, an hour to 2 hours, get out all the kinks and make it work as best as I can in that time. But there were two examples I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you an example of a mudguard that is really way too complicated, and I wanted to show you an example of actuators colliding with themselves. So we'll start with a mudguard. This is a very complicated instance of a mudguard that I built, and this is it. This is the mudguard, 51 pieces for one tiny part of the vehicle, and I built it this way so that it looked as seamless as I could make it look. And everything here, everything you see there is all important for making the mudguard function. We have these pieces at their inconvenient angles to get the 2x2x1s out, just the perfect width. And then we have these, I believe, are very simply put on. Yeah, they're just at their 45-degree angle, and these are at their 90-degree angle. But I've used these angled pieces, one of the pair, to move them closer together ever so slightly, as well as that right there. All of these angles, they're just pulling everything closer together so that it is more seamless. If I was to raise the hood, you see how it started to glitch out there? That is because the trunk is hitting the convertible hood, and the actual hood, the bonnet, is hitting the doors. And this is a very gentle glitch. People won't normally notice that, and it won't cause many issues, but if it collides any more than this, it'll start giving you problems, giving you grief. And then we have stuff like this. This is where I was at when I was just beginning building, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to the first learning curve, and all I can really say about that is just go at it. I mean, really, keep it up. It is the best advice I can give you, because the only way you can get better is by practicing, but always build with the intention to improve. Take a look at how you're building, take a look at how other people are building, and figure out what makes it all tick. Figure out how to get better. And thank you all very much for watching. Goodbye.